Imagine waking up one morning to discover that 2/3 of your brain had wandered off and was making its own decisions. One arm opens a door. Another reaches for food. Another explores a completely different room. And somehow, all of them still belong to you. It sounds impossible. Yet for one remarkable animal living beneath the ocean's surface, this is surprisingly close to reality. An octopus does not think the way you do. It doesn't even think the way most animals do. Much of its nervous system isn't located inside its brain at all. Instead, hundreds of millions of neurons are spread throughout its 8 arms, allowing each one to sense, explore, and even solve simple problems almost independently. It's as though the octopus carries 8 curious minds wherever it goes. And somehow, they all work together. Tonight, we're diving beneath the waves to explore one of the strangest creatures our planet has ever produced. An animal with blue blood, 3 hearts, skin that can change color in the blink of an eye, and an intelligence so unusual that some scientists have described it as feeling almost alien. Welcome back to the Snoozing Scientist. Before we begin tonight's journey, I'd love for you to leave a comment down below and let me know where you're tuning in from. Whether you're listening beside the ocean, high in the mountains, or somewhere far from the sea, it's always wonderful to see where our fellow sleepy scientists are gathering each night. Now get comfortable. Take a slow breath. And imagine yourself drifting quietly beneath the surface of the ocean. The sunlight grows softer as it filters through the water above. Tiny particles drift lazily through the current. The sounds of the world fade away until only the gentle movement of the sea remains. Below you stretches a rocky reef, covered in corals, sea fans, and forests of swaying kelp. At first, everything appears still. Then a rock moves. Or rather, what you thought was a rock. Its surface ripples like liquid. Gray becomes brown. Brown becomes mottled white. Its rough texture smooths into something entirely different. 8 arms slowly unfold from beneath what had seemed to be nothing more than another stone resting quietly on the ocean floor. An octopus has been watching the entire time. One of the reasons octopuses remained mysterious for so long is because they are remarkably good at disappearing. Unlike many animals, an octopus doesn't simply hide behind its surroundings. It becomes its surroundings. Within fractions of a second, millions of tiny pigment cells in its skin expand or contract, instantly changing its color. But color is only the beginning. Specialized muscles beneath the skin can create bumps, wrinkles, ridges, and folds that imitate coral, algae, rocks, shells, or sand. The illusion can be so convincing that divers sometimes swim past an octopus without realizing it was there all along. It's one of the most extraordinary examples of camouflage found anywhere in nature. And perhaps even more remarkable, scientists are still trying to fully understand how it does it. The mystery becomes even deeper when you consider one simple fact. An octopus is colorblind. At least, as far as scientists currently understand. This seems almost impossible. How can an animal produce some of the most spectacular color changes in the natural world without seeing color the way we do? For years, this puzzled researchers. One idea is that the octopus isn't matching colors in the same way a human painter would. Instead, it may be reading brightness, contrast, texture, and patterns in the environment around it. Another intriguing hypothesis suggests that the unusual shape of the octopus's pupils may allow it to gather subtle information about different wavelengths of light, giving it clues about color without experiencing color in the traditional sense. The answer is still being investigated. And that's one of the reasons octopuses continue to fascinate marine biologists. Even today, they refuse to fit neatly into our understanding of the animal kingdom. As the octopus glides across the reef, another remarkable feature begins to reveal itself. Unlike fish, there are no bones supporting its body. No rigid skeleton. No protective shell, despite belonging to the same larger family as snails and clams. An octopus is almost entirely soft. If its beak, the only hard part of its body, can fit through an opening, the rest of the animal can usually follow. Researchers have watched octopuses squeeze through gaps only slightly larger than a coin. Aquariums have recorded individuals slipping through tiny drainage pipes, escaping tanks, and quietly exploring nearby rooms before returning to the water. One famous octopus repeatedly escaped its enclosure during the night, crossed the aquarium floor, climbed into a neighboring tank to eat fish, and then returned to its own exhibit before employees arrived the next morning. For a while, nobody could understand why fish kept disappearing. Eventually, security cameras solved the mystery. It wasn't sabotage. It wasn't faulty equipment. It was an octopus going on nightly hunting expeditions. Stories like these sound almost unbelievable. Yet they have become surprisingly common in aquariums around the world. Keepers often describe octopuses as intensely curious. If something in their environment changes, they usually investigate. A new object. A different rock. An unfamiliar container. Almost everything becomes worth exploring. And unlike many animals, octopuses don't simply look. They touch. Every arm is covered with hundreds of suction cups, and each one is an astonishing sensory organ. Humans mainly experience the world through our eyes. An octopus experiences much of the world through touch. Each suction cup contains thousands of sensory cells capable of detecting texture, pressure, and even certain chemicals dissolved in the water. In a way, an octopus can almost taste by touching. Imagine running your fingers across a table and immediately learning not only its shape and texture, but also something about its chemical composition. That is much closer to how an octopus experiences its surroundings. This constant exploration creates another fascinating question. Who is actually making the decisions? The brain? Or the arms? Scientists studying octopus nervous systems discovered something extraordinary. Only about 1/3 of an octopus's neurons are located inside its central brain. The remaining neurons are distributed throughout the arms themselves. Each arm can process information independently, responding to its environment without waiting for detailed instructions from the brain. Researchers have even observed detached octopus arms continuing to respond to touch for short periods after separation. The arm isn't conscious. It isn't thinking. But its local nervous system continues functioning, carrying out simple behaviors that were once believed to require the brain. It's almost as though each arm possesses its own small control center. The central brain provides overall direction. The arms handle many of the details. To engineers and neuroscientists, this idea is incredibly exciting. Our own nervous systems are organized differently. Nearly everything passes through the brain or spinal cord. the octopus has evolved a much more distributed system, allowing multiple parts of the body to solve problems simultaneously. Some researchers believe studying this unusual architecture could even inspire future robotics. Imagine a robot whose limbs don't simply obey commands but can independently adapt to obstacles, gently grasp fragile objects, or explore unfamiliar environments while constantly communicating with a central computer. Nature developed that concept hundreds of millions of years ago, and it has been quietly moving across the seafloor ever since. Perhaps that's why so many scientists describe encounters with octopuses as strangely personal. Divers often report the feeling that the animal is studying them just as carefully as they are studying it. Not with fear, not with aggression, but with unmistakable curiosity. Two very different kinds of intelligence meeting beneath the sea, each wondering, in its own way, about the other. Imagine, for a moment, that you have only a single chance to raise your children. No second attempt. No next season. No opportunity to begin again. Everything you will ever pass on to the next generation must happen during one brief chapter of your life. For an octopus, this is not imagination. It is reality. Somewhere within a quiet underwater cave, hidden beneath an overhanging rock, a female octopus has chosen a place she believes is safe. Over the coming days, she begins laying eggs. Not a handful. Not even hundreds. Depending on the species, she may carefully attach tens of thousands of tiny translucent eggs to the ceiling of her den, arranging them in delicate strands that sway gently with the movement of the water. And then something extraordinary happens. She stops living for herself. For months, she rarely leaves. Instead, she remains beside her eggs almost constantly, gently stroking them with the tips of her arms to keep them clean. She carefully removes bits of algae, dirt, or debris that might encourage harmful bacteria to grow. Every so often, she creates slow currents of fresh seawater, bathing the eggs in oxygen-rich water so the developing embryos can breathe. Marine biologists have watched mothers perform this quiet routine day after day, sometimes for half a year. She eats little. Sometimes nothing at all. Every bit of energy remaining in her body is devoted to protecting the next generation. By the time the eggs are finally ready to hatch, the mother is often exhausted beyond recovery. Soon after the tiny octopuses emerge into the open ocean, her remarkable journey comes to an end. It is one of the most profound examples of parental investment in the animal kingdom. An entire lifetime devoted to a single generation. Scientists eventually discovered that this heartbreaking sequence isn't simply the result of starvation. Hidden between the octopus's eyes is a small structure called the optic gland. For decades, researchers wondered why mothers seemed to change so dramatically after laying eggs. In the 1970s, experiments revealed something astonishing. When the optic gland was removed, female octopuses sometimes abandoned the usual pattern. Instead of declining after reproduction, they resumed feeding and survived much longer than expected. More recently, scientists have learned that the optic gland produces a complex mixture of hormones that appears to orchestrate the final stage of an octopus's life. In other words, the end of the mother's life is not merely an unfortunate consequence of reproduction. It is part of an intricate biological program. Even today, researchers continue studying these hormones, hoping they may reveal new insights into aging, metabolism, and the chemistry that regulates life itself. As the young octopuses drift away from the safety of their mother's den, they enter a world filled with danger. Most are no larger than a grain of rice. Transparent. Fragile. Carried by ocean currents they cannot control. Very few will survive. Yet those that do begin one of the most unusual lives in the sea. Unlike dolphins, whales, or many fish, young octopuses receive no lessons from their parents. No demonstrations. No guidance. Everything must be discovered alone. How to hunt. How to hide. How to solve problems. How to recognize danger. Every skill develops through exploration. Perhaps this is one reason octopuses seem so endlessly curious. Their survival depends on learning. Every crack in a reef might contain food. Every unfamiliar shell might become a shelter. Every strange object might reveal an opportunity. Researchers often place simple puzzles inside aquariums, clear containers holding food, jars with screw-top lids, small boxes with hidden openings. Again and again, octopuses surprise them. Some learn by trial and error. Others remember solutions after only a few attempts. Individuals often develop different strategies for solving exactly the same problem. It's a reminder that intelligence does not always look the same. Human intelligence built cities. Octopus intelligence learned how to thrive in a world of currents, coral, and darkness. Two entirely different evolutionary paths. Two entirely different ways of understanding the world. And perhaps that's what makes the octopus feel so extraordinary. It isn't simply intelligent. It is intelligent in a way that feels unfamiliar. As though evolution conducted a completely separate experiment beneath the sea, arriving at solutions unlike anything found on land. The deeper scientists dive into that underwater world, the more they realize that the octopus is not just another fascinating animal. It is a glimpse into an entirely different way a mind can exist. One afternoon, a marine biologist lowered a small plastic bottle into an aquarium. Inside was a crab. The bottle had a screw-on cap. To most animals, it might as well have been a safe. The crab could be seen. It could be smelled. But there was no obvious way to reach it. The octopus approached slowly, not in a hurry. One arm touched the bottle. Another explored the cap. Several suction cups traced the threads where the lid met the plastic. For a few moments, the octopus simply investigated. Then, almost casually, it began turning the cap. Within minutes, the bottle was open. The crab was gone. Experiments like these have been repeated all over the world, and while not every octopus solves every puzzle, researchers have consistently found something fascinating. They don't all solve problems in exactly the same way. One individual may pull. Another may twist. A third may abandon one approach entirely before discovering a completely different solution. There is personality in their behavior. Some octopuses are bold. Others are cautious. Some investigate every unfamiliar object immediately. Others remain hidden, watching from a distance before deciding whether something is worth exploring. In fact, scientists who study octopus behavior often describe them using words we normally reserve for people. Curious, shy, playful, stubborn. Those descriptions aren't simply poetic. Carefully controlled studies have shown that individual octopuses behave consistently over time, suggesting they possess stable behavioral traits, what biologists often refer to as animal personalities. And perhaps nowhere is that individuality more apparent than during play. For a long time, scientists believed play was largely restricted to mammals and birds with highly social lives. Then octopuses complicated the picture. Researchers began noticing individuals repeatedly interacting with objects that offered no obvious reward. Floating bottles, small toys, even streams of water released into their tanks. One octopus was observed repeatedly pushing a floating bottle across its enclosure, allowing the current to carry it back before pushing it away again. Over and over. There was no food involved, no training, no apparent survival benefit. Just exploration. Perhaps even enjoyment. Exactly why octopuses play remains uncertain. Some researchers think it helps young animals develop coordination. Others believe it encourages exploration and learning. Whatever the reason, it reminds us that curiosity itself may have value. Sometimes an animal investigates simply because the world is interesting. That curiosity extends beyond objects. Divers have occasionally described octopuses reaching out with a single arm to gently touch a camera lens, a dive mask, or even a gloved hand. Not aggressively. Not fearfully. Almost experimentally. As though gathering information one careful touch at a time. Of course, curiosity can occasionally create trouble. Aquarium staff have countless stories of octopuses unscrewing valves, disconnecting equipment, blocking drains with rocks, or rearranging the decorations inside their enclosures overnight. Some individuals learn feeding schedules so well that they begin waiting near the front of the tank shortly before keepers arrive. Others appear to recognize specific people. One famous octopus reportedly ignored most aquarium staff but regularly sprayed water at a particular employee whenever he walked past the exhibit. Whether this reflected genuine recognition or simply repeated association is difficult to know. But stories like these have encouraged scientists to ask increasingly sophisticated questions about octopus cognition. Can they recognize individuals? Can they remember specific events? Can they solve entirely new problems rather than simply repeating old behaviors? Each new study seems to reveal another layer of complexity. And yet, despite all this intelligence, the octopus lives a surprisingly short life. Many species survive only 1 or 2 years. Imagine compressing an entire lifetime into such a brief span. Learning to hunt. Learning to hide. Exploring an enormous underwater world. Solving problems. Avoiding predators. Finding a mate. All within a period shorter than many household pets spend growing up. It's one of the great paradoxes of nature. An animal with such remarkable intelligence, given so little time to use it. Perhaps that makes every moment of an octopus's life feel all the more extraordinary. From the instant it hatches, it begins discovering a world unlike any other. A world of shifting currents, hidden caves, colorful coral reefs, and endless mysteries waiting beneath the waves. And somewhere in that vast blue landscape, another octopus quietly emerges from its rocky shelter. Its skin changes to match the reef. Its arms begin exploring. Its curious mind goes to work. And another remarkable story begins. As remarkable as an octopus's intelligence may be, some of its most astonishing abilities are written directly into its skin. Imagine standing in front of a mirror. Now imagine changing not only your shirt, but your entire body. Your skin becomes smooth like polished stone, then rough like tree bark, then covered in tiny bumps resembling coral. A moment later, every one of those textures disappears again. For an octopus, this transformation can happen in the blink of an eye. Marine biologists studying octopus skin have discovered that it is one of the most sophisticated camouflage systems ever evolved. The color-changing cells, known as chromatophores, are only one layer of an incredibly complex design. Beneath them lie other specialized cells that reflect and scatter light in different ways. Some produce shimmering blues and greens. Others create iridescent flashes that seem to change as the viewing angle shifts. And then there are tiny muscular structures called papillae. These muscles allow the skin itself to rise into peaks, folds, and ridges, changing the octopus from smooth to rough in a matter of seconds. Scientists often describe the skin as a living display. Not painted, not covered, actually changing shape. Engineers have become so fascinated by this ability that researchers around the world are attempting to build artificial materials inspired by octopus skin. Imagine clothing that changes color automatically, or underwater vehicles that blend into their surroundings. Even military camouflage researchers have looked to octopuses for inspiration. Nature solved the problem long before humans thought to ask the question. Perhaps even more incredible is how quickly these changes occur. Signals travel from the nervous system to millions of pigment cells almost instantly. Rather than slowly blending into the environment, an octopus can transform in less than a second. Divers sometimes describe watching one vanish before their eyes. Not by swimming away, simply by becoming part of the reef. And yet camouflage isn't always about hiding. Sometimes an octopus wants to be seen. If threatened, certain species suddenly display bold contrasting patterns across their bodies. Dark bands appear. Bright flashes ripple across the skin. The message is unmistakable. I've noticed you. Stay away. Communication through color. Communication without sound. Another reminder that the underwater world operates by very different rules than life on land. Then there are the eyes. At first glance, an octopus's eyes seem strangely familiar. Unlike many sea creatures, they look surprisingly similar to our own. They have an iris, a lens, a retina, a pupil. In fact, biologists consider octopus eyes one of the greatest examples of convergent evolution. Humans and octopuses last shared a common ancestor more than 500 million years ago. That ancient ancestor almost certainly possessed nothing resembling a modern eye. And yet, over hundreds of millions of years, evolution arrived at remarkably similar solutions in two completely separate branches of life. One lineage eventually produced mammals. The other produced octopuses. Neither copied the other. Both simply discovered that this particular design worked remarkably well. It's as though nature solved the same engineering problem twice. Perhaps the most surprising difference lies behind the retina. In human eyes, nerves sit in front of the light-sensitive cells. This creates a tiny blind spot where the optic nerve exits the eye. Your brain quietly fills in that missing information so effectively that you never notice it. An octopus has no blind spot. Its retinal wiring takes a different route, leaving the light-sensitive surface completely unobstructed. It's one of those delightful moments where evolution reminds us that there is more than one way to solve a problem. And the surprises don't stop there. Octopus blood is blue. Not because of a trick of the light. Not because of the ocean. Because the molecule responsible for carrying oxygen is completely different from ours. Humans rely on hemoglobin, an iron-rich protein that gives our blood its familiar red color. Octopuses use hemocyanin. Instead of iron, it contains copper. When carrying oxygen, copper produces a deep blue color. More importantly, hemocyanin performs particularly well in the cold, low-oxygen environments where many octopuses live. Once again, evolution found a different solution to the same challenge. Different chemistry. Different biology. Yet exactly the same goal. Keeping a remarkable animal alive beneath the sea. And then there are the hearts. Most animals make do with one. An octopus has 3. One heart pumps blood throughout the body. The other 2 send blood specifically to the gills, where oxygen is collected from the surrounding water. Perhaps the strangest part is what happens during swimming. When an octopus propels itself by jetting water through its siphon, the main heart temporarily becomes much less effective. Swimming is surprisingly expensive. It's one reason octopuses often prefer to crawl gently across the seafloor using their arms rather than constantly swimming through open water. To us, it may look leisurely. To the octopus, it's simply the more efficient way to travel. The deeper scientists investigate these extraordinary animals, the more unusual details they uncover. Blue blood. 3 hearts. Skin that thinks almost as quickly as the brain. Eyes evolved independently from our own. A nervous system unlike almost anything else on Earth. Taken separately, each adaptation is remarkable. Together, they create a creature so unusual that even experienced marine biologists sometimes describe the octopus with a single word. Alien. Not because it came from another planet, but because it reminds us that life on our own planet is capable of becoming far stranger than we ever imagined. One of the greatest mysteries surrounding octopuses isn't how they move, or how they camouflage themselves, or even how intelligent they are. It's why they became intelligent at all. When scientists look across the animal kingdom, intelligence often seems to appear under familiar circumstances. Wolves cooperate in packs. Dolphins communicate with one another. Chimpanzees learn from their families. Humans built entire civilizations by sharing knowledge across generations. Social living appears to encourage larger brains. If you spend your life interacting with others, remembering individuals, understanding relationships, cooperating, competing, and communicating, intelligence becomes an enormous advantage. But the octopus doesn't fit that pattern. Most octopus species live alone. They do not form lasting families. They do not teach their young. A mother never shows her offspring how to hunt, where to hide, or how to solve problems. In fact, the young hatch only after she has finished guarding the eggs, and they begin life entirely on their own. Every lesson they will ever learn must be discovered through personal experience. To evolutionary biologists, this presents a fascinating puzzle. How does an animal become so intelligent without the social pressures that seem to have shaped intelligence in so many other species? One possibility is that life beneath the sea presents an entirely different set of challenges. An octopus cannot rely on speed like a tuna. It cannot rely on armor like a crab. It cannot rely on a protective shell like its distant relatives, the clams and snails. Instead, it survives by constantly making decisions. Should it hide? Should it flee? Should it investigate? Should it hunt? Every rocky crevice might contain food or danger. Every shadow could be a predator or simply another rock. The underwater world changes from one moment to the next, and an octopus must continually adapt. Some researchers have suggested that this unpredictable lifestyle may have favored flexible thinking over fixed instinct. Rather than evolving one perfect behavior for every situation, the octopus evolved the ability to improvise. And improvisation is something it seems remarkably good at. Researchers have observed wild octopuses carrying coconut shells across the seafloor. At first, the behavior looked rather awkward. The shells slowed the animal down, making it more vulnerable while it transported them. Yet once the octopus reached open ground, something clever happened. It assembled the shells into a protective shelter. In effect, it had carried its home with it. This was one of the first clear examples of tool use ever documented in an invertebrate. Not because the shell was part of the octopus's body. Not because it found an existing shelter. Because it transported an object for future use. That simple observation challenged long-held assumptions about which animals were capable of planning ahead. And then there are the escapes. If you spend enough time talking to aquarium keepers, you'll notice that stories about octopus escapes become surprisingly common. Some have squeezed through plumbing no wider than their beaks. Others have lifted lids that were thought to be secure. A few have even learned to wait until nighttime, when the building became quiet, before attempting their escape. One particularly famous octopus repeatedly left its aquarium after dark, crossed the floor, entered another tank to feed on fish, and then returned to its own enclosure before morning. At first, the missing fish were blamed on equipment failures or human error. Only after cameras were installed did the true culprit reveal itself. It's difficult not to smile imagining such a scene. A quiet aquarium. Rows of sleeping fish. Moonlight filtering through the windows. And somewhere, an octopus patiently carrying out another carefully planned midnight adventure. These stories have earned octopuses a reputation for mischief, but to scientists they reveal something much more interesting. The animals are constantly experimenting. They push. They pull. They climb. They squeeze. They investigate. They appear to treat unfamiliar situations almost like puzzles waiting to be solved. Perhaps that's one reason researchers enjoy working with them so much. No two individuals behave quite the same. One octopus may solve a problem immediately. Another may invent a completely different solution. A third may ignore the problem altogether and become fascinated by something the scientists hadn't even noticed. There is a delightful unpredictability to them. They refuse to behave like simple biological machines. Instead, they seem to approach the world with a kind of open-ended curiosity. And perhaps the most remarkable thing is that all of this evolved completely independently from us. The last common ancestor shared by humans and octopuses lived more than 500 million years ago. It was a simple marine creature, nothing like either species alive today. From that distant ancestor, evolution split into two entirely separate journeys. One lineage eventually produced forests, mammals, primates, and human beings. The other remained beneath the oceans, eventually producing an animal with 8 flexible arms, blue blood, 3 hearts, distributed intelligence, and a nervous system unlike anything found on land. 2 completely different paths. 2 completely different bodies. 2 completely different ways of understanding the world. Yet both arrived at something we recognize as intelligence. That may be the most profound lesson the octopus has to offer. Intelligence is not a single destination. Nature does not build only one kind of mind. Given enough time, enough challenges, and enough opportunities to adapt, evolution can discover entirely different ways of solving the same problem. And somewhere beneath the waves, hidden among coral and stone, another octopus is quietly proving that lesson all over again, one curious touch at a time. If there is one place where an octopus's intelligence becomes most apparent, it is during a hunt. Picture the ocean floor at dusk. The sunlight has faded into deep shades of blue, and long shadows stretch between coral heads and scattered rocks. Small fish retreat into crevices. Crabs emerge cautiously from their hiding places. The reef begins changing shifts as the creatures of the day slowly give way to those that prefer the cover of darkness. Somewhere among the rocks, an octopus begins to move. Not quickly, almost thoughtfully. One arm extends forward, feeling its way across the reef before the rest of the body follows. Another arm slips beneath a ledge. A third gently explores a narrow crack in the stone. It isn't simply searching. It's investigating. Marine biologists often describe octopus hunting as remarkably deliberate. Unlike predators that rely on explosive speed or overwhelming strength, an octopus often behaves more like a careful explorer. Every hole might contain a shrimp. Every shell might hide a crab. Every dark crevice presents another mystery waiting to be solved. Sometimes the octopus doesn't even need to see its prey. Researchers have watched octopuses slowly insert the tip of a single arm deep into narrow spaces where their eyes cannot possibly look. The suction cups begin feeling every surface they touch, almost reading the shape of the hidden world inside. If something moves, the octopus knows. If something has a shell, it knows that too. And if that hidden creature tries to escape, it often finds itself surrounded before it even realizes the octopus has arrived. One particularly fascinating study examined how octopuses hunt different kinds of shellfish. Clams present one challenge. Mussels another. Crabs another still. Scientists noticed that octopuses didn't use the same strategy every time. Sometimes they pulled shells apart with surprising strength. Sometimes they patiently chipped away at weak points using their beaks. Other times they drilled tiny holes through the shell itself. Yes, drilled. Hidden inside the octopus's saliva are chemicals that help soften tissue, and with the help of its beak and specialized mouthparts, some species can create an incredibly small hole through a shell before injecting saliva that relaxes the prey inside. Only after the shell has been safely opened does the octopus begin feeding. It's a method requiring patience, precision, and surprisingly sophisticated behavior. Not every octopus uses the exact same technique. Some appear to develop preferences based on experience. It's another reminder that learning plays an important role in their lives. And perhaps nowhere is that learning more obvious than in laboratory experiments. Researchers have presented octopuses with transparent containers holding food inside. To a human, the solution is immediately obvious. twist the lid. For an octopus, this object has never existed in evolutionary history. There are no screw-top jars on coral reefs. No plastic containers beneath the waves. Yet many individuals eventually discover exactly how the mechanism works. What's particularly interesting isn't simply that they succeed. It's how they succeed. Some begin by pulling. Others push. Some rotate the container repeatedly before noticing the lid. A few appear to pause, almost as though reassessing the situation, before trying an entirely different approach. Watching these experiments can feel strangely familiar. It resembles the way a child investigates a new toy. Curiosity leading to experimentation. Experimentation leading to understanding. Understanding leading to confidence. The octopus seems to learn not because evolution prepared it for every specific problem, but because evolution prepared it to solve unfamiliar ones. That distinction is incredibly important. The world is constantly changing. Storms reshape reefs. Predators appear. New opportunities emerge. An animal capable of adapting may survive situations that instinct alone could never predict. Some neuroscientists have suggested that this flexibility is one of the defining characteristics of intelligence itself. Not memorizing answers. Learning how to discover them. And then there is one final detail that many people find almost unbelievable. Despite everything we've discussed, the distributed nervous system, the remarkable camouflage, the problem-solving, the curiosity, the sophisticated hunting strategies. The octopus belongs to a group of animals we often overlook entirely. It is an invertebrate, an animal without a backbone. When many people think of intelligent creatures, they picture mammals or birds. Chimpanzees, dolphins, elephants, crows, parrots. The octopus reminds us that evolution is wonderfully unpredictable. Intelligence did not arise only once. It found another path, deep beneath the surface of the sea, following a completely different blueprint. And perhaps that's why the octopus continues to captivate scientists more than almost any other marine animal. Every time researchers believe they have reached the limits of what an octopus can do, another surprising discovery seems to emerge from the depths. As though the ocean is quietly reminding us that some of its greatest mysteries are still waiting to be found. There is another side to an octopus's life that most people never witness. The open ocean often appears calm from above, but beneath the surface, danger can arrive from almost any direction. Sharks patrol the deeper water. Murray eels weave through the rocks. Large fish cruise the reef. Seals, dolphins, and even other octopuses may become predators under the right circumstances. Unlike many marine animals, the octopus has no protective armor. No spines. No teeth designed for defense. No thick shell to retreat inside. Its greatest protection has always been its ability to avoid being noticed in the first place. And when that fails, it has one of the most famous escape plans in the animal kingdom. Almost everyone has heard that an octopus squirts ink. But few people realize just how sophisticated the defense really is. The dark cloud isn't simply meant to hide the octopus. The ink contains a complex mixture of chemicals, including large amounts of melanin. the same pigment that gives human hair and skin much of its color, but it also carries substances that appear to interfere with a predator's senses. Some researchers believe these chemicals can temporarily overwhelm an attacker's ability to smell or taste the water, buying the octopus a few precious seconds to escape. Sometimes the ink forms nothing more than a drifting cloud. Other times, something remarkable happens. Instead of dispersing immediately, the ink holds together as a dense, dark shape called a pseudomorph. For just a brief moment, it resembles the outline of another octopus suspended in the water. The predator lunges toward the false target. Meanwhile, the real octopus has already vanished into the shadows. It's a decoy. A trick. One of the oldest illusions beneath the sea. And if the ink isn't enough, the octopus has another extraordinary ability. It can sacrifice one of its own arms. Imagine being able to leave behind your hand while you quietly walked away. For many animals, such an injury would be devastating. For an octopus, it can mean survival. If a predator grabs an arm, the octopus may release it and flee. What's even more astonishing is what happens next. The detached arm continues moving. Its hundreds of suction cups remain active. The muscles continue contracting. The arm twists, curls, and writhes independently for several minutes. To the predator, it appears as though the prey is still struggling. Attention remains fixed on the moving arm. By the time the deception ends, the octopus is often long gone. Over the following weeks or months, something equally remarkable begins to happen. A new arm grows. Scientists are still studying exactly how this regeneration works, because it is one of the most impressive examples of tissue regeneration found in complex animals. Nerves reconnect. Muscles reform. Suction cups develop once again. Eventually, the replacement becomes nearly indistinguishable from the original. Researchers hope that understanding this process may one day help improve treatments for nerve injuries and tissue regeneration in humans. It's another example of how studying unusual animals often leads to discoveries far beyond marine biology. Some of the most fascinating research involving octopuses today isn't taking place in the ocean at all. It's happening in genetics laboratories. When scientists first began sequencing the octopus genome, they expected to find a fairly ordinary invertebrate. Instead, they found something unexpected. The octopus possesses an unusually large and complex genome, containing tens of thousands of genes. Even more surprising was the discovery that octopuses make extensive use of a process called RNA editing. Normally, DNA serves as a stable instruction manual, while RNA carries those instructions to build proteins. In octopuses, however, many RNA molecules are modified after they are copied from DNA. It's a little like writing a recipe, photocopying it, and then editing the copy before anyone starts cooking. These changes allow the octopus to produce slightly different proteins without altering the original DNA itself. Scientists believe this flexibility may help octopuses adapt the function of their nervous system to different environments, particularly colder waters where nerve cells behave differently. It's an active area of research, and one that continues to surprise geneticists. The deeper they look, the more unusual the octopus becomes. It's almost as though evolution kept experimenting with new ideas inside this one remarkable lineage. A distributed nervous system. Living camouflage. Regenerating limbs. Chemical deception. Flexible genetics. None of these features alone would make the octopus extraordinary. Together, they create one of the most biologically inventive animals on Earth. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson hidden beneath the waves. Nature rarely follows a single blueprint. Give evolution enough time, and it will solve the same problem in ways no engineer, no inventor, and no scientist could have predicted. The octopus is living proof of that. A reminder that the oceans still hold creatures capable of surprising us, even after centuries of exploration. And with every new expedition, every carefully designed experiment, and every quiet dive into the blue, scientists continue uncovering new chapters in the remarkable story of one of Earth's most extraordinary minds. One of the most remarkable discoveries about octopuses wasn't made in the open ocean. It was made in the laboratory, almost by accident. For many years, scientists assumed that sleep was a fairly simple process in animals. An animal rested. Its brain slowed down. Eventually it woke up. But as researchers began observing octopuses more closely, they noticed something unusual. A sleeping octopus doesn't remain the same color. Instead, every few minutes, its body suddenly comes alive. Its skin ripples through waves of white, brown, orange, and deep red. Patterns race across its arms. The pupils contract and expand. Tiny muscles beneath the skin twitch as though the animal is reacting to events that no one else can see. Then, after a minute or so, everything settles again. For a long time, nobody knew what these episodes meant. In 2021, researchers studying octopus sleep found evidence that these periods closely resemble REM sleep, the stage of sleep in humans associated with vivid dreaming. The octopus appeared to alternate between quiet sleep and an active sleep state in regular cycles, much like birds and mammals. The discovery surprised neuroscientists around the world. After all, humans and octopuses are separated by more than 500 million years of evolution. Our brains are built completely differently. Yet both appear to experience similar sleep states. Does that mean octopuses dream? The honest answer is that we don't know. No scientist can ask an octopus what it experienced while asleep. But many researchers believe that these active sleep periods may play an important role in memory, learning, or processing experiences from the day, just as REM sleep appears to do in humans. It's a fascinating thought. Somewhere beneath the waves, hidden inside a quiet den, an octopus sleeps. Its colors gently shifting. Its arms twitching ever so slightly. Its brain perhaps replaying moments from its day. A crab discovered beneath a rock. A close encounter with a shark. A puzzle solved. A new hiding place explored. We may never know. And somehow, that mystery makes the scene even more beautiful. As scientists learned more about octopus behavior, they began asking another question. How long have creatures like this existed? The answer reaches astonishingly far into Earth's history. The ancestors of modern octopuses were swimming through ancient seas hundreds of millions of years before the first dinosaurs ever walked across the land. Long before flowering plants. Long before birds filled the skies. Long before mammals became the dominant animals on Earth. The oceans were already home to distant relatives of today's octopuses. Those early ancestors looked rather different. Many possessed external shells that provided protection. Over immense spans of evolutionary time, some lineages gradually reduced those shells. Others lost them entirely. At first glance, Giving up a protective shell seems like a terrible trade. Without armor, predators become far more dangerous. Yet evolution rarely removes something without offering another advantage. Freed from the heavy burden of a shell, the ancestors of modern octopuses became faster, more flexible, and capable of squeezing into places no shelled animal could ever reach. Their bodies became softer. Their movements became more graceful. Their world expanded. Many scientists believe this change may also have encouraged the evolution of greater intelligence. Without a shell to rely on, survival depended increasingly on behavior, learning, adaptation, problem solving. Every generation favored individuals that could make better decisions. Over millions upon millions of years, those small advantages accumulated. The result is the extraordinary animal we know today. Perhaps sometimes to the largest, and sometimes it belongs to the animal willing to change, to experiment, to solve problems, to remain endlessly curious about the world around it. As marine scientists continue exploring deeper parts of the ocean with remotely operated vehicles and advanced underwater cameras, they regularly encounter octopus species that have never been studied before. Some live thousands of feet beneath the surface, where sunlight has never reached. Others inhabit underwater volcanoes, hydrothermal vents, or vast abyssal plains that humans have only recently begun exploring. In many ways, the story of the octopus is still being written. Every expedition brings the possibility of discovering a new species, a new behavior, a new adaptation, a new surprise. And perhaps that is the most wonderful thing about science. No matter how much we learn, nature always seems ready to reveal one more secret to those patient enough to keep looking. Somewhere, in the quiet darkness beneath the waves, another octopus is exploring a rock no human has ever seen. Reaching into another hidden crevice. Solving another small mystery. Living a life almost entirely unknown to us. A gentle reminder that our planet still contains countless stories waiting to be discovered. Perhaps one of the most surprising places scientists have found octopuses is not among colorful coral reefs at all. It's in the deepest parts of the ocean. Far below where sunlight can reach, beyond the blue waters familiar to divers, the sea slowly fades into complete darkness. The pressure increases with every passing meter. At a depth of just 1,000 meters, the weight of the water pressing down is already more than 100 times greater than the air pressure we experience at sea level. By 4,000 meters, the pressure is immense. It is difficult to imagine such an environment because nothing like it exists on land. Yet octopuses live there. Marine researchers exploring the deep Pacific with remotely operated submarines have discovered species unlike any seen near the surface. Their bodies appear almost translucent. Their movements are slower and more delicate, as though every motion has been refined to conserve precious energy in a world where food can be scarce. One species became especially famous after researchers noticed its unusual posture. As it settled over its eggs, the female spread her arms gently around them like an umbrella, sheltering them from the surrounding water. The scientists affectionately nicknamed it the Dumbo octopus because of the ear-like fins extending from either side of its head. Despite the playful name, it lives in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Cold, dark, silent, yet perfectly adapted to a world most humans will never visit. In fact, some deep-sea octopuses spend years caring for their eggs. One remarkable study, led by marine biologist Bruce Robison, followed a female deep-sea octopus that remained with her developing eggs for more than 4 years. For years. Without leaving to hunt in the way shallow water octopuses typically do. It is the longest egg brooding period ever recorded for any known animal. The discovery astonished biologists. The cold temperatures of the deep ocean dramatically slow development, meaning the embryos require far more time before they are ready to hatch. The mother waits patiently through it all. One quiet season after another. 1 year after another. Until finally, the tiny octopuses emerge, already unusually well developed and prepared for life in the deep sea. Stories like these remind us that the ocean follows very different rules than the world above it. Time itself seems to move more slowly in the depths. And speaking of time, octopuses also seem to experience aging in unusual ways. Unlike humans, who gradually become older over many decades, octopuses often spend much of their relatively short lives growing rapidly. Their bodies change quickly. Their intelligence develops quickly. Their world is learned quickly. Everything happens at an astonishing pace. Biologists sometimes describe their lives as intensely compressed. A lifetime of exploration, learning, hunting, escaping predators, solving problems, and reproducing may unfold in just a year or two. Imagine if everything you would ever experience had to fit into such a brief window. Every discovery would matter. Every meal. Every shelter. Every encounter. Perhaps that's one reason octopuses seem to approach the world with such relentless curiosity. There is little time to waste. Another fascinating discovery concerns pain. For many years, scientists debated whether invertebrates experience pain in the same way vertebrate animals do. Reflexes are one thing. The conscious experience of discomfort is another. In recent years, carefully designed experiments have provided compelling evidence that octopuses do more than simply react to injury. They appear capable of experiencing ongoing negative states associated with pain and can remember places where unpleasant experiences occurred, avoiding them later even when the immediate danger has passed. This finding has changed how many countries think about octopus welfare. Today, several nations recognize octopuses as sentient animals in research settings, acknowledging that they deserve protections once reserved primarily for vertebrates. It is a remarkable shift. Not because octopuses became different, but because our understanding of them became deeper. Perhaps the greatest lesson the octopus has offered science is one of humility. Again and again, researchers have approached these animals expecting something relatively simple. Again and again, the octopus has surprised them. It has challenged assumptions about intelligence, about nervous systems, about camouflage, and with every new discovery, one thing becomes increasingly clear. Life is capable of becoming far more inventive than our imaginations often allow. The octopus is not remarkable because it breaks the rules of biology. It is remarkable because it reminds us just how many different rules biology can write. The oceans have had hundreds of millions of years to experiment. And among all those countless experiments, evolution quietly created an animal that seems almost impossible. An animal that can disappear without moving, taste with its arms, think with its limbs, solve problems, recognize patterns, dream, perhaps, and continue surprising the very scientists who have spent their lives trying to understand it. It is difficult to imagine a better reminder that the natural world still holds mysteries. Not hidden on distant planets, not waiting in some faraway galaxy, but here on Earth, beneath the gentle waves, patiently waiting for us to look a little closer. If you were to watch an octopus for an entire day, one thing would become clear almost immediately. Very little of its behavior is wasted. Every movement appears to have a purpose. Even when it seems to be resting, its arms are quietly exploring the world around it. One arm may remain tucked safely beneath its body while another slowly traces the edge of a nearby rock. A third gently tests the opening of a shell. The octopus is almost constantly gathering information. Marine biologists sometimes compare this behavior to the way humans absent-mindedly run their fingers across the surface of a desk or pick up an unfamiliar object without thinking. The difference is that for the octopus, touch is one of its primary ways of understanding the world. Each of its hundreds of suction cups is capable of gripping with remarkable precision, but gripping is only part of the story. Inside every suction cup are thousands of tiny sensory receptors that can detect pressure, texture, movement, and dissolved chemicals in the surrounding water. Scientists estimate that a single arm contains hundreds of suction cups, each continuously sending information back through its own network of nerves. Imagine shaking someone's hand and instantly learning what they had been eating, where they had been, what material their clothes were made from, and whether they had recently touched a piece of coral. That is perhaps the closest comparison we can make. An octopus experiences the world with astonishing richness through touch alone. Researchers have even discovered that the suction cups possess chemical receptors unlike those found anywhere else in the animal kingdom. These receptors appear specially adapted for underwater life, allowing an octopus to taste objects without placing them in its mouth. It's an elegant solution to a problem unique to the sea. Vision can be limited by darkness or murky water. Touch rarely lies. Another fascinating behavior appears when octopuses build their homes. Unlike animals that permanently occupy a burrow or nest, octopuses often become underwater architects. They collect shells, small stones, pieces of coral, even empty coconut shells when available. Using their flexible arms, they carefully arrange these materials around the entrance to their den. Marine researchers have observed octopuses modifying the same shelter repeatedly, almost renovating it over time. Some entrances become narrow enough that only the octopus can squeeze through. Others are partially hidden beneath carefully placed rocks. These dens offer protection not only from predators, but also from strong currents and curious neighbors. In some locations, scientists have discovered areas where dozens of discarded shells surround an octopus den. At first, researchers wondered whether the shells had simply accumulated naturally. Closer examination told a different story. Many belonged to crabs, clams, and other prey that had been eaten by the octopus over many months. The piles gradually grew larger until they formed what marine biologists sometimes jokingly refer to as octopus gardens. A record of countless successful meals quietly preserved outside the entrance. Then there are the mimic octopuses. Discovered only in the late 1990s in the waters of Indonesia, the mimic octopus astonished scientists almost immediately. Many animals imitate one other species. The mimic octopus appears capable of impersonating several. If threatened, it may flatten its body and spread its arms to resemble a venomous lionfish. At another moment, it may pull 6 arms into a burrow while extending 2 behind it, creating the appearance of a highly venomous sea snake. Researchers have also observed behaviors resembling flatfish and jellyfish. What's remarkable isn't simply that the octopus changes shape. Many cephalopods do that. It's that it appears capable of selecting different disguises depending on the situation. Exactly how these decisions are made is still being studied. Does the octopus recognize different predators and choose the most effective disguise? Or are these responses triggered automatically by specific environmental cues? The answer remains uncertain. But either possibility reveals an extraordinary level of behavioral sophistication. One final detail often surprises people. Despite everything we've discussed, the intelligence, the camouflage, the remarkable nervous system, octopuses are astonishingly clean animals. Aquarium keepers frequently report that octopuses separate their living space from their waste. Food remains are often carried outside the den and discarded away from where the animal sleeps. The shelter itself is kept relatively tidy. It's a small behavior, easy to overlook, yet it reflects something deeper. The octopus is not simply reacting to the world. It is organizing it, changing it, improving it, making decisions that shape its environment. Perhaps that's why encounters with octopuses leave such lasting impressions on the people who study them. Marine biologists often spend decades observing sharks, whales, fish, turtles, and countless other ocean creatures. Yet when asked which animal surprised them the most, many quietly mention the octopus. Not because it is the largest, not because it is the fastest, but because every time they believe they understand it, it does something unexpected, as though the ocean itself is gently reminding us that intelligence can take forms we never imagined. Not only in creatures that look like us, but also in one soft-bodied animal with 8 curious arms, quietly exploring the underwater world one careful touch at a time. As scientists have continued studying octopuses over the last few decades, an interesting pattern has begun to emerge. The more closely they observe them, the more difficult they become to categorize. Are they primarily problem solvers? Explorers? Predators? Architects? Escape artists? The answer seems to be all of the above. Perhaps no single behavior captures this better than the way an octopus investigates something completely unfamiliar. Human beings are naturally curious, but much of our curiosity depends on our hands. We pick things up. We rotate them. We feel their weight. We press buttons to see what happens. An octopus behaves in a surprisingly similar way, despite having evolved along a completely different path. Researchers often introduce unfamiliar objects into aquariums simply to observe what happens. Sometimes it is a smooth glass bottle. Sometimes a brightly colored toy. Sometimes a shell unlike anything the octopus has encountered before. Almost immediately, one arm begins reaching toward it. Then another. Soon several arms are exploring from different directions at once. One suction cup tests the surface. Another investigates the opening. A third traces the edges. The octopus rarely rushes. Instead, it seems to collect information piece by piece, gradually building an understanding of what lies before it. Neuroscientists find this particularly fascinating because each arm is contributing different sensory information simultaneously. Rather than a single hand gathering data, the octopus is effectively performing several independent investigations at the same time. It's a style of exploration unlike almost anything seen in vertebrate animals. And perhaps that explains another curious observation. When octopuses solve puzzles, they often appear surprisingly calm. There is little frantic movement, little panic. They simply continue trying. If one approach fails, another begins. If that one fails, they try something else. Watching an octopus solve a problem often feels less like watching an animal struggle, and more like watching someone patiently think. Another remarkable discovery concerns memory. Experiments have shown that octopuses are capable of remembering solutions to problems for surprisingly long periods. An octopus that learns how to open a particular container today may remember the solution weeks later without needing to start from the beginning again. Researchers have also found evidence for both short-term and long-term memory systems, suggesting that different kinds of experiences are stored in different ways. This may sound familiar because our own brains organize memories in much the same fashion. Yet the biological machinery involved evolved independently. Once again, nature arrived at similar outcomes using completely different blueprints. The ocean is filled with examples like this. Different paths leading toward remarkably similar solutions. Perhaps one of the most beautiful examples involves light. Although octopuses spend much of their lives among reefs and rocky coastlines, many species become most active during dawn, dusk, or nighttime. The underwater world changes dramatically during these hours. Sunlight fades into soft blue shadows. Colors gradually disappear. The reef grows quieter. Tiny glowing organisms begin drifting through the darkness. The ocean becomes an entirely different place. For an octopus, this transition creates opportunity. Predators that rely heavily on vision become less effective. Small crustaceans emerge from hiding. The reef transforms into a landscape filled with movement. Marine researchers diving at night often describe these hours as magical. An octopus that remained completely hidden during the day may suddenly emerge, stretching its arms across the rocks with slow, graceful movements. Without the bright daylight, its camouflage becomes almost unnecessary. Instead of disappearing completely, it moves with quiet confidence through the darkness. There is something almost peaceful about watching it. No sudden bursts of speed. No unnecessary energy. Just patient exploration. One careful movement after another. Perhaps that's fitting. Because if any animal seems to embody quiet curiosity, it is the octopus. It doesn't dominate the ocean through force. It survives through awareness, through flexibility, through learning, through an endless willingness to investigate the unknown. And perhaps that's why scientists remain so captivated by it. Every expedition reveals another behavior that nobody expected. Every new experiment uncovers another question. Every answer seems to lead to several more mysteries. In many ways, the octopus reminds us that intelligence is not a finished destination. It is a process. A continual conversation between an animal and the world around it. One question leading naturally to the next. One discovery opening the door to another. And somewhere tonight, Beneath the quiet waves of an ocean lit only by the moon above, an octopus is gently reaching into another unexplored crevice. Not because it knows what it will find, but because curiosity itself has carried its species through millions of years of evolution. And perhaps that same quiet curiosity continues to carry all of us forward as well. And so, as our journey beneath the waves begins to come to an end, the ocean grows quiet once again. The last rays of sunlight have long since disappeared above the surface. The coral reef settles into the gentle rhythm of the night. Tiny fish retreat into their hiding places. The currents continue their slow, endless dance through forests of seaweed and towering coral. And somewhere among the rocks, almost impossible to see, an octopus quietly watches the world around it. When we first began this journey, the octopus seemed almost unbelievable. An animal with 3 hearts, blue blood, 8 arms that can think almost for themselves, skin capable of changing not only its color but its texture, a body with no bones, a mind unlike any other on Earth. It sounded almost like something imagined for a science fiction story. Yet every one of those remarkable adaptations evolved here on our own planet. Not in some distant galaxy, not on another world, but beneath the same oceans that cover more than 2/3 of Earth. Perhaps that is what makes the octopus so captivating. It reminds us that the most extraordinary discoveries are not always waiting among the stars. Sometimes they are hidden beneath the waves, quietly living lives that are every bit as mysterious as anything we could imagine beyond our planet. We often think of intelligence as something familiar because we compare everything to ourselves. We recognize faces that look like ours, hands that resemble ours, voices that sound like ours. The octopus gently challenges that way of thinking. It shows us that a mind can take a completely different form. That curiosity can evolve along another path. That evolution is capable of producing not just one kind of intelligence, but many. There is something deeply humbling about that thought. For hundreds of millions of years, while continents shifted, mountains rose, and countless species appeared and disappeared, octopuses continued quietly exploring their underwater world. Feeling with their arms, solving problems, changing color like living works of art, disappearing into reefs so perfectly that even today, experienced divers sometimes swim past without ever realizing an octopus was there. And despite centuries of exploration, despite satellites orbiting our planet and robots exploring the deepest parts of the sea, these remarkable animals continue to surprise us. Every year, scientists discover new species, new behaviors, new adaptations, questions they never thought to ask before. It is a wonderful reminder that science is never truly finished. Every discovery opens another door. Every answer reveals another mystery waiting patiently behind it. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson the octopus has to offer. Not simply that nature is clever, but that nature is endlessly creative. Given enough time, life experiments. It tries new ideas, new shapes, new solutions. Most disappear, a few endure, and every now and then evolution creates something so unusual that even centuries later we still struggle to understand it completely. As you settle in a little deeper and the sounds around you grow quieter, imagine that hidden reef one final time. The water moves gently above. Moonlight filters faintly through the surface. An octopus slowly glides across the rocks, each arm exploring the world with quiet patience. There is no rush. No noise. No audience. Only curiosity. Only the endless rhythm of the sea. Long after tonight has become tomorrow, long after this moment has quietly slipped into memory, the oceans will continue breathing with the tides. The coral reefs will continue growing. The currents will continue circling the globe. And somewhere beneath the waves, another octopus will emerge from its rocky shelter, beginning another night of silent exploration beneath the oldest and largest wilderness on Earth. Thank you for joining me on tonight's journey through the fascinating science of octopuses. I hope you've enjoyed discovering just how extraordinary these gentle, curious creatures truly are. Until our next adventure together, sleep well, stay curious, and remember that some of the greatest mysteries on our planet aren't hidden in distant places at all. They're quietly waiting beneath the surface, where the ocean keeps its secrets, one gentle wave at a time. Good night.